Hello, hello. Here we are finally at the Dante tutorial guide. So as said before, I'm going to be dividing Dante into two parts. The first part, this part, is going to be his straight move list, and the second part will be strategies and methods of fighting with Dante. So I'm hoping this part will go a little faster, mainly because Dante has so many moves. I'm going to go through them systematically, and I'm going to divide them up in sections. Like, first we're going to start with his melee weapons. And the main thing to know about Dante and his melee weapons are that he's got 4 of them. So he's got Rebellion, Gilgamesh, Lucifer, and Yamato. And they all kind of have their own roles, and you should kind of treat them as such. I think it's common when you're a new player to kind of pick up one of these weapons and just try to master it before switching to the others. But that's not really how Dante plays. You need to know when and how to switch between all of his weapons and use them simultaneously. So let's start with Rebellion and go through it real quickly. As a note, a lot of these, especially for the first 3, they're going to be supplanted by using the Sword Master style, so what you can do with them will require you to be in the style half the time. So Rebellion is Dante's kind of crowd management weapon. You're going to use this to move enemies, to move yourself. A lot about this is the weapon has long range, and that it's its greatest utility. It's also pretty good in every situation, so you're going to find yourself coming back to this a lot. In terms of damage, it's okay, but it's not great. But let's just get right into it. So this is Dante's standard 3. This is Dante's standard 3-hit combo. So you just get it by just spamming the attack button. The main thing to note is that 2 good attacks and the last attack is a knockback. Much like Nero's main attack, you aren't going to use this as much. Especially not the 3rd hit, because it knocks enemies away. And unlike Nero's ability to snatch enemies, Dante doesn't really have a good way to bring those enemies back. So you're probably not going to go through the full combo. His second Rebellion combo is attack, pause, and then spam. So an important thing about this is that the second hit hits all around him. I'll just show it again right there, which is pretty good, as it'll stun enemies. Rebellion is really good at stunning enemies, as it's just pretty much what it does. Oh, there goes my phone. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it is that he'll go right into million stabs, which is this right there. So Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition introduced an ability that if you just hold the attack button, which I'm doing there, he'll just do it for a little bit by himself. I can't recommend this. There's 2 reasons why. One, as you can see when I'm going to hold this, it doesn't go for that long. And second, when I don't hold it, you can see I can kind of keep it going further. It's even more effective when there's an enemy to hit. He'll just keep going. The second main reason of why you don't want to just hold this button is that when you do, you can't follow it up. See, I'm trying to use a high time like that, but once you start holding the button here, I can't cancel out of it. But if I start tapping it, I can cancel right into it. So you gotta just get used to not holding that button for any reason. Let's see, what else does he have on the ground? So those are the only ones he has without Sword Master. Actually, he has one more, which is the round trip, where you throw your sword at an enemy, it'll hit them, and then Dante can call it back by using the attack weapon again. Do not confuse this for Virgil's, because it is absolutely awful. Like, that entire time that he's saying freeze, he might as well be saying it to himself. You can't do any movement. You can't, I'm just spamming attack. You can't do anything while he's doing this. It's pretty bad. There's some niche applications. If one enemy, you launch them very high in the air, and you already have this charged. You can kind of use it to keep them there, to juggle them, but once again, you're not going to be really relying on this. The other thing that makes Virgil so good is that Virgil can do it in the air. Dante cannot. I'm letting go, and he won't use it in the air. So don't use round trip by any means. All right, now into the Sword Master skills. We got Prop, which is just the regular Sword Master style action button. This is really good at knocking enemies very high into the air, and it can be followed up by High Time. But if you press it again, you get Shredder. So I think it's Prop and Shredder. It's pretty sweet to combo them, and new players will do that a lot. What's really useful is after you prop, you can follow it up with Shredder, and when the enemy comes back down, they'll be held in place if they're light enough, mainly Scarecrows, which I can show here off one of these Scarecrows. They'll just be held there, and then you can follow it up with High Time. I'm just going to finish these guys up real fast. It's pretty stylish. It does a lot of damage, and it is very effective at keeping an enemy down, like stunned and not messing with you. The other ones that Dante has is his forward style attack, where you just press forward and style, and he does this dash, and you don't need to run into the enemy or anything. You just need to keep pressing the style button, and he will just auto combo. Every part of this is just me pressing the button. It's like baby's first combo, honestly. It's a strange thing. At least the Devil May Cry 3 one had a little more versatility. It's coming back in Devil May Cry 5. I don't understand it. It's an interesting attack because if your enemy is dead, like if they're at 1 life for any reason, and you start this, none of these attacks will actually hurt him until like the last one. So you can just go through this entire attack and just build up style and build up Devil Trigger, and the last one will hit them. They really went over the top with Trish with these kind of attacks in this style, but I just don't like it, honestly. I'm not really going to use it unless there's one enemy left. I'm feeling up for it. I want some style, and I want some Devil Trigger meter. The one thing to note is right after this part, 1, 2, 3, and that long pause before the final swing. That goes on for a while. So you are very open right here. And once again, if you don't finish it, you won't actually kill anything. You can always just like switch to your guns and fire once and it'll be fine, but it's something to note. The other 2 attacks that Dante has on the ground with Rebellion is if you go back and style, it's drive. So you hold back and press it, and you can charge it. I believe it has 2 levels. Yeah. And also, if you follow it up by pressing the button right after he lets go, whoops, he'll do 2 more attacks following it. Now, this is a very, very powerful attack. It has a charge-up time. If you can, I would really recommend trying to get it to the first level, and you will do tons of damage. It also kind of follows the enemy you're locked on. If they're in the air, I think it's the second 2 hits will follow where they go. But this is a great crowd attack. If you have a bunch of enemies on the other side and you have some time, you can get out of there, charge, and just fire. The other way to use this, which took me forever personally, and this is kind of embarrassing, is the quick drive. I just couldn't understand how you did it, and I thought using quick drive just meant you didn't have to charge it. I don't know. I never looked it up. But if you use the Rebellion attack and the style attack at the same time, he'll do it fast. He'll do this quick swing, and then he'll go straight into it. This doesn't do too much damage, but it's nice to throw out into combos because it will once again go through all of the enemies. You can't follow this one out, sadly, but it'll just go through a crowd of scarecrows or whatever is behind what you're trying to hit with no problem. So that's it for Rebellion on the ground. So we're going to quickly go to Rebellion in the air. This one is a lot easier because there's only 2 attacks. Regular attack is Helm Splitter. Just comes straight down. There's nothing else. For new players that are transitioning from Nero to Dante, especially in that first playthrough, and getting used to be able to use aerial raves with Nero, and then you jump up and just do this and go straight down, it's super frustrating. So Helm Splitter is great because it should basically be used identical to Split with Nero, where it's just a really fast way to go down. Like, it's a really fast way to go from top to bottom, and that's it. It's not that great of a combo ender because the last hit is a knockback. If you're thinking like fighting game rules where you just bring the enemy straight down, this does not apply here, sadly, because after you do your combo and you drop them, they're just gonna be knocked back. Like Nero, though, you can kind of do a quick combo where you just do quick things and jump right back down, but it's not as useful. It doesn't do as much damage as Double Down, and it doesn't have the area of effect of Double Down, so I don't really recommend it. So the only other thing that Dante can do with Rebellion in the air is Aerial Rave. This is kind of your bread and butter for holding enemies up there. So there's 4 hits, and that last hit will knock enemies away. So you rarely want to go all the way through. You want to do usually 3 and then switch into something. But if you go for the full thing, that last attack when you spin will knock your enemies away. Air Rave is great. It's not roulette spin by any means, but it will be what you do up here. And what's really great about it is you can follow it up by a lot of different attacks. You can go 1, 2, 3 and switch into Yamato. 1, 2, 3 and switch into Lucifer, or kind of the traditional switch into Gilgamesh. It's pretty good. It's pretty great. You can use it pretty much in every combo, and I highly recommend it. And if you can air hike or bounce off the enemy, you can kind of just keep it going for an extra round. That's it for Rebellion. We're going to go through Gilgamesh now. Gilgamesh is... It's your damage, honestly. Gilgamesh does tons and tons of damage, and that's really how you want to be using it. So the first thing to note is every attack, except for Kick 13 and Killer Bee, except for those 2, can be charged. Gilgamesh has 3 levels. It has uncharged, let me do the same attack, charged, and then like a level 2 charge. It is very, very slow. And since you can charge every attack, a regular combo looks a lot different in speed and damage when you start charging each attack. Last thing I'm going to note on charging is, 1, you're not going to do it a lot, honestly, because it does require you to stand there for a very, very long time not doing anything. But if you are going to do it, you're going to need to learn how to just cancel, because there's no point otherwise. So just canceling is, I think that's the name, I'm not sure, but is the idea that you're going to charge and you're going to let go the second the charge happens. I'm not exactly nailing it right now. Let me try. Whoops. There we go. That last one was a just cancel. The way you can tell is that there's a bit of a red glow. Whoops. There you go. That one was it. There's a bit of a red glow that happens as the attack goes through. This is kind of like learning how to use Nero's max act, where you just have to get the timing down. But if you can do this, these attacks do a lot of damage. For certain attacks, it is a lot more noticeable. And it does more damage than like the higher charged ones. So even if you want to charge it all the way, you want to charge it to the second one. Still missing it. There we go. You want to charge it to the second one, and you want to just cancel it. So that is the main way to maximize the damage that Gilgamesh will put out there. So let's just go through the attack. So the basic combo, just spamming it, is that. So it ends with this little kick. First 2 hits will always be the same. Third kick kind of knocks them down, and final kick does tons of damage, but pretty much only single target. And that's pretty much only way you want to use it. Just like, if you're noticing the trend that the regular spam combo of these characters isn't used much when you get better, this continues here. You really don't want to do this unless there's just one enemy. Like a Mega Scarecrow is perfect for this, because once you knock them down, you have time to charge this all the way. This, I think they're called crescent kicks or something? I'm not entirely sure. But that last kick, which shows off how amazingly flexible Dante is very, very powerful. More often than not, though, you'll be using Gilgamesh Combo B, which is 1, 2, and pause. And the main reason for this is, unlike the first one, it comes out a lot faster, and it does, just like all the other Bs, it does a nice amount of area of effect just around and in front of Dante. That last hit knocks back, but it'll also hit in a kind of like, I don't know, I would say a 180 degree at least in front of Dante, which is pretty good. So that's the main combos. The forward attack is kick 13. Just like that. Which will be powered up by Devil Trigger. I'll go over those after, but there it is. You can't charge it. You don't really have any control over it. The last attack knocks them up, so it's kind of Dante's launcher in this mode. So you can kind of like combo off like that, but most attacks that take complete control away from the character you don't want to do, because you can't jump out of it, which makes it, you really have to commit to it. But for what it's worth, it hits a lot of enemies in front of you, and it has a nice it has a nice launcher, so it's not a bad attack. You just really need to know when you're going to be putting it out there. I don't remember the name of this last attack, but it's the back attack, and so it's kind of a dodge, but then if you attack again, or I think if you hold it, he'll kind of attack back forward. If I remember correctly, in DMC 3, this was just your forward attack, which kind of feels weird that it's kind of switched like this. It's still good. Like, it's just that it doesn't get you any forward momentum, because you kind of end up just a little further up than where you were before. I think that you get further if you charge it, but even then it's not that much. So the main use of this is kind of like Shuffle with Nero, where you can use it to dodge it. Oops, let me just lock on. You can use it to dodge an attack and follow up with a counter attack. Or you can start comboing someone and finish it like this. Like, I'm a big fan of that one. And the reason is that this attack does a lot of damage, and this is an attack that can be just cancelled, like, very well. Due to the nature of it, you are actively moving away from your target. Oops. That you kind of have the space to dodge. You can kind of jump out of it, but not really. Let me see. Yeah, once you hit that first level of charge, you can jump out of it. So it's not... You're still kind of stuck there, but not forever, thankfully. Alright. So, now we have the Swordmaster attacks with Gilgamesh on the ground. And there are 3. The regular one is this... I can't remember what it's called. I'm just going to say it's called Shockwave. Dante just punches the ground. And I'm just going to skip to air attacks just for a second, because if you use it in the air, it's the same thing. So, this attack, I believe, is much, much better in DMC3 than it is in 4. It looks cooler, but it's still good. Generally, you won't be just throwing this out there. It's a good attack to kind of switch into from Rebellion, or you could also do it from Yamato. but you kind of need to be surrounded by enemies, and you kind of need a second. You can just throw it out there, but it really doesn't do as nice damage as you would. You really want to charge it at least to 1, try to just cancel it, and knock back everything around you. If you're doing it from the air, you're kind of using it as half a helm splitter, in the sense that it gets you to the ground fast, while making it somewhat safe to land due to the knockback, but you can't charge it. This is, I did miss this one. This is one of those attacks you just can't charge with Gilgamesh. And therefore it loses a lot of its power when you can't charge it. So I don't recommend using in the air unless you're... Yeah, even then, I don't think it really speeds. I think you just fall at your normal speed. Yeah. So I would only use it to clear the area around you, and if that, rarely. But on the ground, it's pretty good. So the forward and back one with Swordmaster. The forward one is this dragon uppercut thing. If you just spam it, it's just your launcher, which isn't bad, actually. This is one of those moves you can actually throw out without needing to charge it, because you can just switch into something else. Just a quick launcher, it does decent damage. If you charge it, Dante will follow it up. Oops, trying to just cancel that. And if you charge it all the way, he'll do this crazy spin. It'll do a lot of damage. It's pretty sweet, but it is almost identical to this attack, which I'll have to show you with an enemy in a bit. Can't remember what it's called, but it's like the most powerful attack that Dante has. So if you have an enemy, especially Blitz, especially bosses, you can get them into the right position, use the back style button, hit them, and kind of go right through it. Actually, I'm just gonna, if I need more enemies, I'll just reset the... Oops, that's totally what I deserve. So this attack will just destroy absolutely any enemy. If you can use them on practically anything. The only thing is it doesn't charge in the traditional sense. You are stuck doing it until it's done. If you want to cheese through battles with Dante, just use this attack. Like, you can even... Let me see. You don't even need to switch to another weapon. Just knock him up and take him out. So the real power of this, though, because right now you're seeing this and it's not the full power, is that you need to distorted strike it, which is the term used, yeah, I'm gonna get attacked, is when you take a hit and you switch into Devil Trigger as the hits make contact. I'll probably make, either I'll make another video, or frankly you can just YouTube another video, because there's so many explanations on it. But when you turn into Devil Trigger when Dante is landing a hit, it kind of hits again in the transition. So because that attack kind of, it looks really aggressive, like a lot of hits, but I think it's just like 3 that do a lot of damage. Because you can kind of copy it on each hit, you end up basically doing double damage, plus some because you're in Devil Trigger. Alright, so Gilgamesh in the air, the first attack is Flush, which is this. It's just jumping. You just deal damage when you jump. You're barely going to notice it. I know there's some neat tricks you can do with it, but for the average player, it's just extra damage when you're in this weapon. Then you have the Air Shockwave, which, as mentioned before, that's all it is. And then you have Killer Bee. Killer Bee, which is the regular attack in the air, is amazing. This is definitely the like one of the better attacks Dante has. Namely, it will bring you and the enemy down without knocking them back. And it will also... I'll try to use... Oh, can't retry. Alright, well, we'll do it the old way. It will also bring down... I don't think it has much of a knockback, which is particularly useful. So I'll demonstrate on these scarecrows real fast, because I feel like this is the one that needs to be demonstrated. Come over here. Oops. Come on down. So if you can kind of bring them with you into a position that you can keep comboing them, but that's not even close to what makes all the best things about Killer Bee. The best thing is how easy it is to use jump canceling off of it. If you've ever seen a run of someone playing through like Devil May Cry 3 against the final boss on the hardest difficulty, and they're not like overtly stylish, you're going to see them use that attack and jump cancel off over and over and over again. It is very powerful, it does a lot of damage, and it's easy to do. You won't see that as much in Devil May Cry 4 because Dante has better options, but especially against little enemies, it's very effective. The last thing that's really worth mentioning is how much distance it can give you. Like, it gives you a nice horizontal distance while still going down, which makes it a good way of either escaping areas or chasing enemies down. Alright, I'm going to say that's it for Gilgamesh. Let's go straight into Lucifer. How are we doing on time? 25 minutes. Alright, so Lucifer is the wacky weapon. If we've got Rebellion as crowd control and Gilgamesh as damage, Lucifer and frankly Yamato both kind of fill into this like combo extension and style niche. They're good weapons, but they're weird to use, and frankly, you won't really be busting them out all the time by themselves. They're really good when you can use them alongside the other weapons. So Lucifer, if you don't know, is this dancing attack. I'm not even kidding. These are, I believe, tango or salsa moves that he's pulling out. And while you do that, a lot of these attacks, Dante will just hit them, but it will also produce these floating pins. And these floating pins will stick into enemies or stay there until enemies run into them. And after a certain amount of time, they'll explode. With Swordmaster, you can kind of position them, which makes them even more effective. So I'm going to go real quickly through this because a lot of this falls into strategy, so it's more important to kind of understand how this works. So Dante has a lot of ground combos. This is like the most aggressive weapon for ground combos, mainly because it doesn't have a lot of uses in the air, but kind of. I'll get to that in a second. So if you just spam attack, Dante will go on forever and do the same attacks without stopping. And this is okay. But just to continue the trend, you will not use that very much because it doesn't do that much damage. It moves Dante a lot, as you can see, and it doesn't give you a lot of control. So the first one you can see right away is the first, like, the best way to explain it is at any point in this combo, at any attack, if you decide to pause and then keep attacking, it will change the combo. So if we pause after the first hit, we get this kind of single target attack. If we pause after the second hit, we have this strange attack that hits behind us but produces a lot of pins. 2, 3. And that's it. Okay, it seems like those are the only ones. So the important ones of each of them, this one is definitely what you want to use on one enemy. It puts 7 pins by itself into the enemy. So Mega Scarecrows, Scarecrows, Frost, anything that stands still long enough for you to be able to do this is really the one. I'm gonna kind of missed it. There we go. Ooh. All right, I'm realizing I kind of glossed over one. So it's attack, attack. There we go. So it's 2 pauses in there. You got to attack, pause, and then when he crouches down like that, you spam. So there's my correction there. The other one that one, when you attack, there you go, attack, pause, attack. What's really good about that is it puts out a lot of pins behind you. There's not really usually going to be enemies behind you in this kind of weird area, because it doesn't even hit directly behind you. But the main perk of it is that when you use this, is that you can reposition those pins immediately. It produces a lot of pins, and you can keep attacking. Alright, so that's it for like the combos. You're going to find how to use them really kind of difficult, because you need to know all of them, and you need to know which ones to pull out at which time. But I find myself mainly using that last one to take out singular enemies. But that's it. The real MVP of Lucifer is the forward attack. So unlike all the other ones, it doesn't move you at all, and instead Dante just puts 5 pins out immediately. And it can be spammed very, very easily. If you use it 3 times, you've got max pins. And then you can do whatever you want with them, which is pretty great. It's also really good against a blitz that's just standing there to take off its electricity. Or really big targets like Burial, where you can put all 5 pins into them. But if you're looking to get the pins out as fast as possible, this is the attack you're going to want to be using. The one other thing is the back and the rose throw, where when you do this, and by itself, Dante just throws a rose, looking at the sun, so it's a bit hard to see. There you go. And just another one appears. Don't question it. It just appears in his mouth. And this is also a very important attack. So the main use of it is when Dante throws the rose, all the pins explode. So if you've been setting up kind of a bunch of pins and you need them to go off right away, that's how you do it. The other way to kind of manually make the pins go off is if you kill the enemy where the pins are in, all the pins inside that enemy will explode. Kind of like Nero's blue rose attack. It's the same mentality. The other part of this is that if you look in the menus that actually explain the attacks, they're going to say that the rose thrown has no significance. And they are lying to your face. And the reason they're lying to your face is if you hit them with the rose, which I guess I'll use these guys to show this off, they go flying. Like, it is a ranged launcher. And I don't have the skill, but if you do, you can actually kind of keep them in the air indefinitely. But it has this weird arc. As you saw, if the enemy's knocked down, you can kind of go right over their heads. So it's kind of hard to aim, but it'll launch anything. But like I said before, the main use is to kind of trigger all of these pins at the same time. So I'm just going to finish these guys off. Alright, so just finish you off with Lucifer for thematic reasons. There we go. So you can kind of do some neat stuff with the rose, but really it's at a higher level. If you just want to kind of stun an enemy that's further away, it's really effective by that. But otherwise, very niche use for a very niche weapon. So the last few techniques, I'll go straight into the air attack before we go to the swordsman style attacks, Swordmaster. Because it is also it's like identical to just the ground attack in the sense that you just keep pressing it and it keeps doing that. Things that make it good is the fact that it drops 4 pins in a fast formation. It kind of holds the enemy there, kind of. You can jump cancel off of them to stay up there. But the main use, I would say, is against bosses. Because bosses have a lot of space, and you can, if you use this against Burial, you're going to have a great time. You can stick so many pins in Burial, and you can just stay up there the whole time, jump canceling it, and being able to trickster out real quickly. Because you don't even need Swordmaster. You can just be up there and get out of there. It's very, very effective. Okay, quickly in the Swordsmaster things. So the first one is if you just press it, it will just position all the pins in front of you. You can do this in the air, you can do this in the ground, it'll just fire forward. The kind of interesting thing about this is if you don't have pins, it'll make two. So, if you start a combo, you can actually start with this. And as the combo continues, you'll get more and more pins to fire. Once a pin is stuck in an enemy, you can't reposition it this way, but until then, it'll work. In fact, because you can do this during any other action, it is actually pretty recommended to use it while you attack. These next two are the ones that you can use during attacks. But yeah, you can spam this while you're attacking, and it still works. As a side note, all of Lucifer's attacks are super sexually named and themed, even though it's just dancing. So I think like bondage, climax, pinup. I don't know. Read into that as you may. I'm pretty sure Dante's asexual anyways, so take it as you want. So if you use that same attack, the style button but holding forward, Dante will put them up pointed at an enemy. So whichever enemy you select, this can also be done in the air, but whatever enemy you select, they will just, instead of going just straight ahead like this, instead it'll kind of attack at them. So there's perks and non-perks about this. Before I get into that, I just remembered to mention, every time you do this, the timer resets on them. So you can keep them around for a lot longer than their timer goes if you just keep doing this. Anyways, I think this one's called Pinup. I could be wrong. I have no idea. But this attack is good if you can keep an enemy from moving. A lot of the times this will be enough, and it's kind of great because you don't have to worry about where an enemy is. If you prefer positioning yourself, you will find more use in the regular style attack with Lucifer. If you would rather be doing your own thing, you can just target an enemy, use it. Oh, that's the wrong one. Target an enemy with it, and it'll just go for it, and you don't need to worry too much. But the problem is a lot of enemies can kind of dodge this attack. If they jump, if they move vertically, this won't hit. Burial, who is a giant target, will rarely be hit by all of this. So it's something to consider. Another thing to consider, which I haven't really made a lot of reference to, depending on the number of pins you have, the formation you'll make is kind of different. Like, once you have enough pins, you'll make this complete X. And this weird star pattern, which kind of shrinks down when you use the regular one. But if you only have like 5, it doesn't exactly do it, which is fine. It'll still do kind of the same thing. You won't really notice a difference. I think it's mainly a style factor. So your final one, I think it's Ecstasy, I could be wrong, is Back and Style, where Dante claps, all of the pins will come around him, and float there for a second, and then explode. So you might be wondering, why not just use this attack and blow them up manually, because it takes less time. The main use of this one, though, which can be performed in the air, is that they don't explode immediately. What's different is if an enemy makes contact to this attack, they will the pin will explode immediately. There's some neat stuff you can do by being right next to an enemy with enough pins that the space right in front of Dante is safe, and all of those and they'll kind of stay there, and then all the pins will explode for a lot of damage. But that's tricky. The main use of this is that it does a lot more damage than you think it will. and you can kind of combo it weirdly with like Gilgamesh if you set it up and then attack before they explode. It's odd, but it works. I believe if you don't have anything, yeah, he'll create 2. But once again, weirdest angles. Just like the other ones, the more pins you have, and you want the full 15 to get that full area of effect, the more around Dante it'll hit. Alright, that's it for Lucifer. We're making good progress, surprisingly. So let's go to Yamato. Yamato is going to be fast and fun. So the way Yamato works is Yamato is a style. It's the Dark Slayer style. So it only uses the style button, and it can be used really easily in like with other melee weapons because it doesn't use the same button. Alright, so this is Virgil's sword. So Nero. Dante kind of uses Virgil's attacks from DMC3 with it, with not a lot of skill. Now that like Devil May Cry 4 Virgil is here, it really puts Dante to shame with Yamato, which is fine. It makes sense. But so you've got about, I don't know, 4 or 5 attacks with it, and some neat things you can do with it. So the first thing to note is that when Dante goes into Dark Slayer style, he puts his hair up like Virgil. That's not something to note, it's just fun. So the first thing is just the regular combo, and that's all you have. Unlike the other ones where you have at least 2, this is all you have on the ground. The first 2 hits don't do as much damage. Third one does a lot, has a lot of knockback, has a wide area of effect in front of Dante. It's pretty good, but it also kind of ends combos because even if you can do something after it, they're too far away unless they're up against a wall. Then you're free to kind of combo them. There's 2 kind of main uses for this combo, really, in my mind. The first one is just to use the first 2 attacks as just additional rebellion hits. Like, if you are doing some just comboing off before you could go up in the air, that's really the best time to just throw in, these 2 hits. Not the third. I keep doing 3. These 2 hits. He really just wants to do that third hit every time. But 1, 2, and you can go into Rebellion, or you can go into Rebellion and then swing these 2 in there. A big theme of Yamato is it works really well with Rebellion. The other use of the ground combo of Yamato is that once you go to the third, that little animation of Dante putting the sword back in will grant you both style and a ton of Devil Trigger. If you're looking for like a Devil Trigger battery, this is the weapon to use it. Like, you get at least, I would say, half to 3/4 of a pip of Devil Trigger. So if you can position yourself, it's like a taunt. If a taunt was an attack, followed up with, and that ended quickly. Taunts, you have to wait until most of it's done to get the Devil Trigger. This is just that amount of time, so that's pretty sweet. Then Dante has access to Judgment Cut, or a bastardized version of it. So either the forward style or the back style. So this attack does a really decent amount of damage, and it's a good crowd control finisher. This is kind of what I mean about how Yamato works, as that it and Lucifer kind of fill in the spots, because they don't really do anything particularly well, but they'll have these attacks like Judgment Cut that just are really great in the right situation. So the thing with Judgment Cut is no matter which one you use, Dante, as you can see, will kind of dash backwards. And then he's vulnerable for a few seconds. And even after he's done the attack, there's still a bit of a pause before the attack goes off. This doesn't work at all like Virgil's Judgment Cuts in any game, so you shouldn't really use that as a comparison. He can't charge it, he can't do multiple hits. But for what it's worth, it does really good damage. So when you do it forward, he does it far away. You do back, he does it closer. That's really it. Last thing about Yamato is air combo. So his aerial rave has this one attack that holds the enemy there, and then a second attack that knocks them away. The main use of this is you can combo from Rebellion or into Rebellion really easily with the first hit. If you do it twice, your enemy's going to go flying away from you and you won't be able to do anything else. But if you do the first one, you can follow it up very easily. The other use, I would say, is that you can kind of do this the second hit close to the ground. Like really close to the ground if you time it right. And that is very, very effective at knocking back a lot of enemies in a wide arc. And you can follow it up really well with something like Gunslinger to kind of combo into it. But if you're using it really high in the air, you're kind of really wasting it. Because yeah, you'll send your enemy far away, like a Mega Scarecrow to the other side. But then you're just kind of stuck there. So there's not much to do without tricking or just picking another enemy to fight. But if you're down on the ground and you finish it, you're immediately ready to keep going because there's not much of a cooldown on the ground. Alright, that's it for Yamato. Now we're going to go into Dante's ranged weapons. After that, we'll do his remaining styles and his Devil Trigger. This video is getting just as long as I kind of expected it to. Once again, Dante has so many attacks. So let's do his guns. So, one thing to note is both the first two guns, Ebony Ivory and Coyote A, can be charged. But if you're in Devil Trigger, they'll always be charged. For the sake of ease, I'm just going to do them without Devil Trigger just to show you how they are, and I won't charge them too much. So, Ebony and Ivory, you are very, very rarely going to spam this attack. It is really cool, it is really fun, it keeps enemies up in the air for a really long time, but it does next to no damage, and it makes you go really slowly. If you charge it, then it is very useful, but kind of as a burst attack. If you think of, because Nero's charges, you just let go and they fire. Dante's charges, they kind of power up the next few attacks. So you want to charge up, and then when you're ready, you just spam it until it's gone. And it'll do much better damage, and this is really effective at taking cloaks off of enemies. So that's kind of it, like, for Ebony and Ivory. If you go into Gunslinger, on the ground, he's got twosome time, which just kind of, if you change which direction he's firing, he kind of just fires at everything. He kind of auto targets, so you got a pretty good chance of hitting enemies, but once again, not that great. Better in Devil Trigger because they're powered up. You can't power up the Gunslinger moves, sadly, so it's not as good without Devil Trigger. If you spam the button, he'll go into this mode where he spins his guns for a second, and then he'll fire much faster. This looks a lot cooler than it is. Just like Nero's attacks, I feel like, and I'm almost 100% sure, they do more damage when you're right up to an enemy rather than when you're far away. And this attack requires a pause, so you need the enemy to be close, but you also need a second to stop firing and stunning them, so you're probably going to get hit. But if there's one enemy or in the air, it is pretty fun to keep them up there. Lady has a much more powerful version of this attack. If you use Dante's Gunslinger in the air, he will do this rain attack. It's something rain, I can't remember, but it's pretty sweet. And thankfully, you can just hold the button unlike spamming it. If you play Devil May Cry 3 and 4, you know how much nicer it is just to be able to hold the style button to do this. This is a fantastic attack. It is great in combos. If you are comboing someone, you can just kind of jump over them and it'll hold your momentum. And you can combo them. If there's a group of enemies, you can kind of jump over them and do a lot of damage. In Devil Trigger, it does a lot of damage. The other thing to note is the first part of the volley will hit around. So if you're trying to hit a lot of targets, the first part is much more important, and then the last part will kind of target right below Dante for the most amount of damage. This is great on big bosses. It'll do really good damage, and it gains a lot of style. It's pretty fantastic. And that's literally it for Ebony and Ivory. Coyote A, the shotgun, also has a charge. Just has regular, it just fires, air and otherwise. It's really powerful, especially charge. You should treat this as kind of a cannon. I believe you get 4 hits when it's charged. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. And that's pretty much all you need. Devil Trigger, it'll always go off. So, the only thing to note about this, really, is that if you jump cancel or jump off of an enemy, the cooldown is less. In fact, never use this on the ground if you have an option. So I'm just spamming the button, and you can see how long it takes for Dante to fire. I'm also confused how he reloads it, but, you know, magic. But if you use it in the air, you can get more hits out. Whereas even charged on the ground, you're doing the same. You're doing the same time. It's you want to use this in the air, and you'll get more hits quicker. Don't worry too much. Unlike Ebony and Ivory, don't worry too much if you can't get all of it out in one go. 2 or 3 charged attacks should be more than enough. And the charge lasts for a little while, so you can get 2, dodge away, and get the last one in. So, the Gunslinger attacks. If you just press the style button, he'll do this sweet move and hit enemies around you. Once again, Lady is just given a much better version for no reason whatsoever. Well, I mean, she is the gun character, so there is a reason. But this is pretty decent. Once again, in Devil Trigger, it's a lot more powerful. I'm using the super costume. I don't know if I mentioned it, just so I could show off the things that you can do with it. Because there's a lot of differences, unlike Nero's. And it also lets us have the other gauges full up. So, little nunchuck attack. With Dante, you also get a Gunslinger Stinger, where he slides forward and uses the gun. This isn't at all comparable to the length of Stinger, which now I feel like I didn't ever bring up Stinger in all of this time. I feel like I missed a few of Dante's attacks on the ground. That's alright. Stinger is great. Use Stinger all the time. So, with the shotgun, this Gunstinger does a good amount of damage, better than Devil Trigger for the power-up. Not as good as regular Stinger, but pretty sweet. If you are locked on and you hold behind you, Dante will do this quick attack right behind you real fast. Super stylish, super quick, knock an enemy behind you from attacking you sometimes. You're going to use this less and less. When enemies become Devil Triggered, it's practically useless because this won't stop them, even in Devil Trigger. But it looks cool. There is no difference in the air. You can just use these air nunchucks, and that's it. So that's Coyote A. Alright, let's go into Pandora. This is the weapon. Just like Lucifer is kind of the odd one out of Dante's melee weapons, Pandora is the weird gun that he has. Definitely 100% you should be treating Pandora as more of a weapon than a gun. So let's go through it. There's so many different moves that it has, so we're going to go through it real fast. And it's important to notice that pink meter in between the health bars, that is the destruction meter, something like that. And as it fills every time Dante does damage with the regular attacks of Pandora, and it is used by the super attacks that are done with Gunslinger. Alright, Pandora. First thing, regular attack is this bow of 2 missiles. It comes out fast, it does okay damage, you're not going to use it that much. If you have this out, you can kind of aim with it, but this isn't really a game about aiming. You'll most likely lock onto whatever you need. Now, if you have this out and you double tap left, right, it will turn into an actual rocket launcher. This is much more often the one you're going to be using. You can use it very quickly. It can hit a large group of enemies. It's really sweet. It also gives you a nice amount of destruction meter. Now, get to the second phase. Now do 2 revolves with either, you can hear I'm using the keyboard or your analog stick, and it'll turn into the third form, which is this giant laser that is somehow powered by motorcycle handlebars. This is the good stuff. This is the good shit right here. This fires through enemies, and it does a ton of damage. Ideally, if you have a moment, trickstering away, pulling this out, flipping it, you'll get a bunch of bar, a bunch of style, and do a bunch of damage. The only thing worth mentioning, because this is kind of the main part of Pandora, is using this, is that if you're in Devil Trigger, it'll take half the inputs. So half the time. As you can see, I'm just going to try to go and do it as fast as possible. Hold on. Like, that's as fast as I can pull it out, but in Devil Trigger, it's out almost immediately. So if you want to use it, like, effectively, Devil Trigger is the best time to use it. The other attack that Pandora does by itself is this little minigun. This is a lot better than it looks. It really pulls up the bar. You can also empower it with Devil Trigger, even though you can't charge it. This is a really good, with Devil Trigger, a really great way to take off cloaks. And it's a really good attack to be just kind of throwing out there, as it is short, and you can cancel out of it, and it'll hit enemies in this weird kind of arc. It fires forward down, but it hits enemies in front of you pretty decently if you're locked on, so you don't need to worry too much about it. So those are the attacks with Pandora that rack up the meter. So how do we use that meter? Well, it's with Gunslinger. So the really basic one is just this attack, where you're in this kind of, I don't know what to call it, Gundam suit, kind of. You transform into this death machine. Every time you regularly shoot, Dante will fire like 1 missile at a time that locks on and follows enemies. It's pretty dorky. But if you want to actually use this weapon, you just hit the style again, and he will fire a barrage. So being in this form takes up the destruction meter. It doesn't now because I have the super costume, and firing it in either way also does. If you have full meter, you pretty much have 2 volleys of these things to use. And that is precisely how you should be using it. I would only recommend going into this mode to turn, fire, and then jump out of it as soon as you can. It is really, really great for both crowd control and single target. I recommend using it on Blitz. I recommend using it on bosses if you have a chance. It is really, really powerful. You can use it in the air or the ground. As you see, when you use it in the air, you kind of stay at that level, and then you do this really slow kind of, woo, like this ride around. It's weird. Don't think about it too much. Just imagine it as a barrage of missiles and nothing else. Then there's 2 others. There is this attack where Dante will throw, it kind of has a blade. As long as it's out, it will constantly, yeah, you can't do it in the air. It'll drain the meter, but it'll keep stunning the enemies that it hits, except for bosses. It'll home on enemies, and Dante will be forever in this awesome pose. If you ever watch Frieza throw discs in Dragon Ball Z, it's kind of the same thing, except for it won't come back and kill you. This is okay. You're not going to use this so much. It's really great for style, for holding enemies there, but it uses the bar so quickly and does so little damage, there is absolutely no point. The final Pandora attack is the forward, drop the suitcase, open it up. I believe it's called Omen, and it is the super attack of this weapon. It is the super attack of the super attacks, actually. So when I eventually do get into the Guide of the Bloody Palace for Dante, there are certain levels that you just beat with this. You just walk in, use this, and it's done. The things to note is, unlike the other ones, it will use all of your bar, and the damage is directly determined by how much of the bar is full. If the bar is really low, I think you'll barely even stun them. If the bar is completely full, you should kill most enemies. A fun fact about this attack, which is the same for Virgil's Judgment Cut End, is that this will only damage enemies on screen. So make sure to position camera. I always talk about how enemies will only attack you if you have them on screen. I'm just going to use this moment to kind of show it. See, the camera pulled back in that last second. If it hadn't, that last one would be dead. If you have the super costume, this is a really silly way to just kind of, kind of go through this. Just going to use this to get through. Oh, well, half health is still not that bad. So that's it for Dante's guns. I'm just going to use this to kill these. So we're going to go straight into the styles. The last things remaining, and we will be done with Dante's moves. And then we can go on to the strategy. So, Dante's moves, the styles Dante's have is Trickster, Swordmaster, Royal Guard, Gunslinger, and Darkslayer. We've already gone over Swordmaster, Gunslinger, and Darkslayer, so we don't need to worry about that. So instead we're going to look at Trickster and Royal Guard. So Trickster is Dante's movement-based style. And it is, if you want to pick a neutral style, I highly recommend Trickster. If you want a style to always go back to, it should be Trickster. Things to note about Trickster is that you have this, you have this dash attack. You can pick a direction, it goes in any way. And this dash, Dante is completely invulnerable during it. Completely. There's no point in it that you can attack. If you don't spam it, there is a point where you can get hit in between them, unless you're in Devil Trigger, because you have infinite ones. But otherwise, there you are. Some people have learned, and I can recommend learning this at one point, is that you can kind of find ways to kind of get around that. I'm not good at it, so I can't demonstrate it. But it just lets you constantly, basically do this without being in Devil Trigger. So Trickster has a few bonuses. So the first one is very easily dash on the ground. The second one is if you get hit and hit the style button, Dante will kind of flip out of it. You'll get some style back, you'll get your momentum, and you won't be knocked down. It's kind of a consolation prize. In the air, this gives you a forward dash. Like you can dash in the air. This is once again great for horizontal movement, especially because you can use it like with your air dash. Sorry, your double jump. So you can get some real distance with it. Once again, this can be done in any direction. The last thing that Trickster can do is that you can teleport. So this will teleport you directly in front of an enemy, or as close as... It has a distance, so there's a certain point it won't go forward. And in the air. This is really great to like kind of chase enemies down, and if they're far away, you can follow it up with a regular trick just to kind of keep moving forward. But this is how, if you see anyone not launch enemies high in the air, this is how you meet them up again. This is great on bosses when you get too far away from them. Overall, pretty fantastic. Once again, not that visible when you don't have an enemy, but we'll be on that later. That's really it for Trick. The only other thing for... Oops. I need to be here anyways. The only other thing is in Devil Trigger mode, you get 2 air tricks. Alright, so let's go into the final style, which is Royal Guard. I'm going to just kill one of these guys, just to make this example kind of easy. There we go. So Royal Guard is your blocking. When you press this button, Dante blocks. When an enemy starts attacking you and you're holding this down, you will take less damage. And it'll fill up your Royal Guard meter a bit. But you will not be using this like this. What is the point of blocking in a game where you want to dodge anything, you might ask? Well, if you don't know already, if you hit the block button right when you are about to take damage... Let me see if I can get you to shield. No, you don't want to shield. There we go. That'll happen. And when that happens, Dante will take no damage. I'm not getting them right now. And gain a lot of style. And that is how 100% you want to be using this. I am not perfect with it, I'm not going to lie. And I can't get it all the time, but it is how you want to use this. If you can switch into going into this mode, like whenever you want, you can effectively get rid of almost all attacks against you. I'm pretty sure there are no attacks that can't be royal guarded, like perfect royal guarded. I don't know what the term for it is. You can do this in the air, you can do this on the ground, you just need to be able to do it. That's all about timing. So Royal Guard has two other things you can do it, because that's a defensive use of Royal Guard. There's actually an offensive use. But before we get into that, I'm going to show the move you're never going to use, which is back Royal Guard. I think it's called Juggernaut or something. It looks so cool. It looks so unbelievably cool, and it is so unbelievably worthless. There's a long animation charge up. He gets this armor, and then all of a sudden, it disappears. During this time, Dante is invulnerable. He takes no damage. Isn't that amazing? No, because he is really, really slow when he does this. Like, really slow. I'm just going to walk with him regularly. That's as fast as I go. So, the best way to use this is to shrug off a highly telegraphed attack that lands like right there and you can stop it. But objectively, why don't you just get out of the way? Why don't you just trick? Why don't you try to block it if you're so prepared for it? So don't use that. The other thing is, with Royal Card, is this attack. I can't remember. I think it's Impact. I could be wrong. That could be the Gilgamesh one. But it's forward and the Royal Guard style button. So what this does is it releases the entirety of your Royal Guard meter and does damage based on that. But just like how Royal Guard works, is if you use it to block an attack, and I don't know if I can do that with these guys effectively. Actually, I don't want to knock you down. I want you to stay up. Alright. So that's the just Royal Guard. Oops. I missed that timing. I recommend practicing on these guys. There we go. If you can nail it at the exact time, it'll do a crazy amount of damage. You will see. I'm just gonna use. Oh yeah, I can't heal with this. I forgot. I just need you like that. That is your example, and I don't know if I'll be able to do it again. You're gonna use this on them, on any enemy, and you will get a crazy amount of damage, style, and it'll put you very much, like, it'll actually put you through them. I'm just doing this so the timer doesn't run out. Alright. That is amazing to take out bosses, to take out big guys. It is really, really powerful, but oh my goodness, is it hard to do. I recommend practicing. As soon as you master the things about Dante, get into Royal Guarding. It is the most fun part about him, if you ask me, is the ability to kind of throw yourself into the fray, and then when people attack you, just block it off, taunt, and keep going. You'll get used to having tons of style points, tons of Devil Trigger, and it's a really good battery just to have the character going. All right. Last thing is just the Devil Trigger moves. So I've already gone over how this works differently in Trickster mode. So all I have to do is go over the main weapons, because that's the only thing that's changed. And the only way they change is that their forward attack is superpowered. So, regular Stinger, Devil Trigger Stinger. This is really good at going through enemies, and it has a really good area effect, and it will actually carry the enemies with you when you go through, especially with Scarecrows. If you want to spam it on an enemy, you really can, and it's pretty fun. But it drains all of these attacks, these super attacks, will drain your Devil Trigger meter. So use it sparingly. Regular kick 13, super powered kick 13. It's sweet because he does a bit of a lunar rising sun attack. I think it's rising sun at the end, which from there you can kind of continue to combo or do whatever you want or dash away. So that's pretty sweet. You're also not going to use it that much though. It's the same thing. It's not that much different than Kick 13 objectively, except for it does more damage. Then finally the pinup. He just puts double regular pinup, double pinup. An important thing to note is that the second bunch is in front of the first, so it's got a wider arc. But it takes more time, so you're doing nothing for longer. The other weird thing about it is you can only have 15 pins, and this puts out 10 at a time. So when you're in regular Devil Trigger, you can go 1, 2, 3, and you have all the ones you need to work with. Like, you have the full set. Boom. I think I said regular Devil Trigger, when you're out of Devil Trigger. But when you're in Devil Trigger, and you do this, let me just get rid of those. Oops. There. So you have 10 now. So if I do it again, I lose half of them for no reason. So I'm kind of wasting it, and wasting all of the Devil Trigger meter. So it's not that great for that. What it's really great at is if you're right in an enemy's face, and you can just do this repeatedly, and they're just going to take crazy amounts of damage. The problem is, it'll burn through your meter like nobody's business, and it doesn't get you that much style or look that good. So I think that's it for Dante's move list. I think I'm going to end this here. It's already been a very long video, but I'm just trying to think if there's anything I missed, and I don't think there is. I'm sorry, I probably didn't go over Stinger and High Roller, whatever his... I can never remember what his is called. But they work identically as Nero's, and Stinger is just amazing. Let's have a moment for Stinger before we're done. Stinger gets you to your enemy, it'll knock them back if you need that. You can turn it into million stabs? I'm not entirely sure, but you can, if you spam the button, you can get it to just stop there. It's a lot more effective on enemies. I think unless I hold the button, I can't do it without enemies. And of course, these aren't the enemies that I can show this on, so there's no point in that. If you use million stabs on something, it'll keep them there. And from there, you can launch. I'm just going to go back to the first enemies so we can just see this right before the end. And oh my goodness, what an attack. From there, you can do that. The weird thing is in Devil May Cry, I already said in the special edition, you don't want to hold the button, but this is like the one case you do want to hold the button, because it still lets you launch them without... See, if I just press it and spam it, it doesn't work, but if I press it and hold it, I can still launch it. So Stinger, you can go into this attack to kind of continue. You can just attack to knock him back. You can just use it to get around horizontally. What a great attack. It is unfair that Virgil gets an air Stinger and Dante doesn't. Anyways, that's it for Dante. I hope this move list helped you out, and next episode we are going to look at strategy guides and how to use all of these moves all together for maximum effect. See you next time.